Welcome this afternoon. This is the Broadband Adoption, Maximizing the Power of Public Computing Centers. Libraries have become critical public access points for patrons who lack residential internet service. Patrons frequently use computers at Utah libraries and aboard Utah Bookmobiles to fill out governmental forms, job applications, and even start a business. This session will discuss how public libraries are providing internet to patrons across Utah, strengthening our community and our economy. Our panel is set up today to be very informal, and questions and answers will be provided, I hope. What we're going to do is we're going to have each of them introduce themselves, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what they're going to talk about, and then we'll just go ahead and start.
Okay, my name is Craig Nielsen. I'm from the Utah State Library. I am a last-minute substitute for a Bookmobile librarian that we were going to have here today, so forgive me if I'm not totally giving you that first-person account. But we'll be talking about the Bookmobile and the what are known as the repositories out in the most rural parts of Utah.
I'm Gwen Page, and I'm the Public Technology Training Manager at the Salt Lake City Public Library, where we do in-house classes and we do outreach. And I brought an example of part of our mobile lab that we take to go to community sites. I've been doing this for about 10 years. The mobile lab we've been doing about 3.
And I'm Jamie Carter. I am the director of Tooele City Public Library. We're a single branch library system that serves around 33,000 people in our community, and then in our surrounding county community, that's more like 55,000 to give it a frame of reference for those of you who are here. I've been in libraries for 10 years, starting for the first 6 with Utah State Library and their mobile library program as well, and then moved over to Tooele as a municipal director.
I'm Skip Condie. I'm with Salt Lake County Library. We have 18 branches. Interestingly enough, Salt Lake City is not part of Salt Lake County. A lot of people say, oh, your big building downtown, that's beautiful. And I say, yeah, it is, but it's not really mine. But I work in the IT department there, connecting all the libraries and our 1,100 PCs.
Just a little bit about what they're going to talk about. Skip will talk to us about the broadband capabilities, infrastructure support, and how Salt Lake County system keeps its patrons connected. Jamie will be talking to us about a broad amount of information, funding issues, challenges with patrons utilizing broadband capable devices, broadband services of accessing information, staffing, and anticipating usage. Gwen will also talk about mobile computer labs, as she mentioned. She has taught classes and working with patrons. Craig will be talking to us about the Bookmobile, and that says a lot right there. So go ahead, and who would like to speak first? Skip, go ahead.
Yeah, I can go ahead and get started with my piece. Forgive my small notes here, but need something. Okay, so I've been asked to speak about what the broadband is, what qualifies as broadband. I think that's been covered quite a bit here, and the number keeps changing. I don't know if you've all heard that. I've heard it in a couple of sessions today, but anything 4 megs and up is the new definition of what the state's referring to it as. So as such, there's a high adoption rate of broadband in the homes. And I know they're throwing out 97%. As I checked nationally, it said 70% of adults have access to broadband at home, and 3% still use dial-up. I don't know if that's the case or not, because that obviously leaves, what is that number, 37% out there, or 27% that don't have any internet. I don't know that it's that high here, but I'm not so sure it's as low as 3 either. So people are using the libraries quite a bit to do that. Now, the average, that's another variable. I would say average I get at home is about 14 meg, but it's up and down. Comcast advertises 25 to 100 meg at home, and CenturyLink has up to 40 meg. With 4G, that depends. I rarely get 3 with 4G, but some of my coworkers that live further out of the valley say, oh yeah, I get above 20 all the time. So as such, yes, everyone has broadband, but they don't have broadband to the scale of the libraries. For instance, Salt Lake County Library, we have a 1 gigabit connection to UEN as our ISP. And so that's much quicker access than what people have at home. I don't know if that entices people to come to the library for that, or if we're getting primarily people who do not have broadband at home. Or maybe it's just the sneaky people who want to be anonymous. But wireless is another very popular thing that we offer, that people come in. I would say we average about 200 to 250 a day during our peak times. That's how many are connected across our 18 libraries. So that's a big deal. As far as your own networks and looking at it and what's your capacity and what do you want to improve, I just had a couple things I wanted to touch on. You have to take into account not just the connection speed to your ISP, but if you have multiple branches, what's their connection speed to you? And then on top of that, how many nodes do you have on your network? For instance, I told you we have 1,100 PCs, but then we have wireless, and then that adds on another 250 right there at any time. So it's taken into account all of them pulling their slice from there. Sorry, getting there, hang on. So broadband, we all want more. Regardless of what you have, we all want more, because that's what history has taught us, is the demand just keeps going up. So how do we get that and how do we do it? For those that are libraries, we qualify as academic institutions. Therefore, we qualify as E-rate, which hopefully you're aware of. E-rate is a federal program from the FCC that gives you discounted services. So we qualify individually. Salt Lake City Library, it's based off of your free and reduced lunch numbers, but we qualify for a 64% discount. And then when we go through UEN, some of the lines we do through UEN, we're now at the UEN rate of 68%. So that's a huge deal, because it's always painful to upgrade. It's always going to be more money. But to do it and know that we're only paying a third makes it much easier for me to push on to my administration. And hopefully you're aware of UEN, the Utah Education Network. That's been talked about in a couple of the meetings today, but if you're not, that's a state-funded agency whose mission is to get broadband to the schools, to the academic entities. So they can help you out with that. What I like about UEN is they have that experience. They're up to date technically on what's there. They know what the latest technologies are, things that we're not big enough to dedicate hours to that and say, well, what's next? What's the best thing for us? Talking to UEN, that's precisely what they do, and they're very good at coming up with that. Also, they have a couple of E-rate coordinators, and they can help you deal with that and work through E-rate, which is a fun process. So after the fact, if anyone wants, I've got contact information for the technical associate for the libraries from UEN that I can pass on to you, so you can get in touch with him, Wes Ferguson. But there's other people as well. Dennis Sampson is here right now. Or Sabrina Scott, who's the E-rate coordinator, or her associate, Melinda. So anyway, that's the bit I had to speak to.
All right. Thank you, Skip. We have Jamie next. All right. Yeah.
I'm going to just invite you guys to jump in on any particular topic that's here and have a discussion about kind of how we're providing, where the rubber meets the road with broadband and libraries. And I'll be frank, no one that comes in the library cares where it comes from. They're mad if it doesn't work. And they're mad if it doesn't work because the computers are old, and they're mad at, they always think the computers are old. They always do. So that infrastructure and the support that we feel like we also get from UEN is really important. It helps us not have old computers. So I've also worked in a couple of situations with the mobile library program. With Bookmobile, there's the physical mobile library that goes from community to community, but there's also a repository library, a fixed site library in a community that dedicates their time and space to the Bookmobile. So I've been on a truck, and I've also been inside the library. And inside the library, the way that those particular communities have handled getting broadband, because they do have fixed computers in those repository libraries as well as on the Bookmobile, is in one situation, an ISP, a local ISP, provided the service for free. And one important thing to remember when we were talking with them about providing that service was that our current customers are your future customers. And they ask us, where are you getting this service? And it hardly ever goes down. So that was to their benefit because they knew that people were asking. One of the things that came to mind as we were talking about this panel and being able to visit with each other, that as a local ISP, you can go through UEN and it's fantastic and they have a ton of support for you. But in a situation that perhaps that's not going to happen for you, for whatever reason, a local ISP, maybe it's to their advantage to give you the same discount that you would get through UEN. You can look up those school lunch numbers. You can figure out what your discount would be in your area, and you can have that particular slice of the pie in your community. You can have that business. Were it not for UEN stepping in with E-rate coordinators, it would be very, very difficult for a library my size I would have to dedicate somebody to spend hours and hours on paperwork. E-rate is a fantastic program, but it is a cumbersome program, so something to keep in mind. And if you are going to go with E-rate, do get in contact with UEN. Definitely. So that was one topic regarding funding. In libraries, our goals are to connect the people that are in those libraries with resources that they need. We are the gateway drug to information. So as such, we also live and breathe on a premise that everybody that comes into the library is equal. If you are 5, your time on that computer is just as important as if you are 105, or if you're running a business, or if you want to get on Facebook. It is a great equalizer. It's an amazing place to work. And I'm not saying you have to be a librarian to be happy, but it helps a lot to work in a library. Our adults come in for several different reasons, of course, for communication. And I was able to receive a story from somebody, and forgive me for not remembering, it was at a national conference where I had mentioned I'm fielding questions from our staff members who are frustrated because people are using Facebook at the library. They feel we are an educational institution, and primarily in that's all we are. And of course I have a couple arguments with that say, well, if all we are is about education, then we should not have one fiction book in the library. Just get rid of every single one of those, because no enjoyment should be happening, lonely learning. But that's not a great answer. And this individual had expressed a story to me that there was a lady who came into their library like clockwork on the same day, every single Thursday or Wednesday, whatever it was, at the same time. And she came in right when the library opened, so she could always get a computer at that time, and she chatted with somebody online. And she told that librarian, or a librarian there, that her friend that she was talking with lived in the same town, but she was on Facebook with her because she was deaf. And she could not communicate comfortably in another way. I'm sure that there are ways, there are phone lines, there are all sorts of technological advances, but here they could chat back and forth and share pictures, and it was like they were having lunch together. But this woman, her friend who was deaf, had this equipment at home, and she did not. So she would come to the library every week and talk to her friend. And those things that we take for granted, that technology can step in and take care of, are important, and they're important to libraries. And so that's one of the reasons why we would provide a service that would do Facebook. Heaven forbid we spend time on Facebook. There's also in libraries a lot of job searching, government assistance, of course, unemployment, food stamps. People come in to do their taxes. Not sure if all you guys knew that you're not getting forms in the mail. So we got in big trouble for that. It was our fault when that happened. Everyone came in and thought it was us that told them not to send forms anymore. Let's see, healthcare, Affordable Care Act. Just turn on the news. I don't have to explain that. And then even just databases about health, general health and wellness. People use libraries to help them with that. It's always funny to me that they'll go in, somebody that's not feeling well will go to a public place to look on WebMD. But it's okay because we just sanitize everything for them so they don't get sick from anyone else either. And then financial health. We have someone that comes into our library every single week that does couponing, and has gone so far as to try to educate all of us on couponing by asking us what our favorite foods are. He finds a coupon, buys it with the coupon, and brings the food to us at the library. We had like taco night anyway because of this individual. Teens are doing college prep. They are doing homework. They are also doing Facebook, but they are doing homework. And if you're a teen, if you email, you're old. So Facebook is just like sending an email to them, and even email may be even old to them, or Facebook may even be a little behind the times for those guys. Our little or younger children also are coming in. We recently received a grant from the state library that was LSTA money, which is Library Services and Technology Act money, and that money helped us to purchase 4 computer stations for the 0 to 5 age range. How our kids are using those, they are touch screen. They also have keyboards, and they have little person-sized mice that fit their hands, and they're the cutest colors. And I'm so happy about that. But the serious side of that is, in our grant project, what we wanted to get to was we need to introduce these kids to the reality of what their world is going to be like. Touchscreen is not a novelty for them. It is really what their future is going to be like. And so we determined that that was important to us, and we actually did little surveys. We had them do little surveys with smiley faces, and then they also commented on different things. And if we have time, I may share a couple of those. They were very telling. Some indicated that those computers were teaching them empathy. Some were teaching them that they could be themselves, and it was important to them that they were important and they were themselves at the library. Those are big statements from little kids. And some you could just tell that they were learning to write, but they knew how to fill out a survey. Even if I didn't know what their language was that they were using, they totally knew how to fill it out. So I was proud of that. Let's see. The people who come in to our libraries are often introducing themselves to that technology, not just these younger kids. Older kids. That's a good term. My dad would like that. He's an older kid. Those who have used technology but maybe haven't used it for a long time are really relearning a lot of what they thought that they perhaps knew before, or technology has changed. In 2 years, think about if you were cut off from technology at home, in your home for 2 years, where you would be at. I don't know if you have stories. I'm sure Gwen has some anecdotes that would speak to some of this. Do you have any off the top of your head?
Of people coming in, and for a variety of reasons. We have people who come in and need to do resumes, and then they do their job search, and they send it out, and some of them come back in and they're so excited to tell us that they got the job that they applied to. In our children's area, we have a bank of computers that aren't connected to the internet that have educational games that we put on them for the kids to play and still be learning. And people bring their kids in and you'll go into the children's department, and sometimes all of them are full, and sometimes it's just one or two is busy and the kids are on other machines. We have folks who come in to do what you said, which is to communicate. So a lot of people come in and do Facebook, or to do their email. We have a fairly large population of homeless folks, plus we get the people who are just traveling through. Sometimes they'll pop over from the airport so that they can do email and then head back to the airport to catch their next flight. So we get a lot of international folks. And we have 202 public access computers. I counted this morning on our back end just to see what we currently had. Plus we have ports that folks can bring their laptops in and use our network that way, or use the wireless that is supplied by X-Mission. So we have a really broad range of use. I know that at one point we had to kind of throttle some of the downloads because it was cramping the style of everyone else because it was using so much of the broadband. But we have recently updated some of it. We're putting fiber in to all of our locations, so that's speeding up our broadband considerably. Do you want me to just continue on with my part, or did you need to
and
do
I would
some
just
more?
like to jump in there. That's a good point. As a library, because you have so many public PCs, sorry, that's an assumption on my part, we do, we had to segment, and so we have a staff network and a public network also for security and wireless, but we had to throttle the public to stop stepping on the branches, because the core work of the library, or the core traffic checking out books, things like that, was being affected by all of the video streaming. And so it's important to get stuff in place to where you're restricting different groups, so that it's a great service, it's there, that's what it's there for people to use, but just make sure it's not stepping on the rest of the network from allowing it to go.
And we did have to do that as well. We teach classes in a variety of things, and we have a lot of people who come in who are wanting to improve their skills so that they can either get a better job or get better at the job that they're currently working at. We have a few businesses who send people to our Excel classes because we don't charge, and they're small businesses and maybe can't afford to send their employees out. And so they come to the classes that we offer in-house. And then we have our little lab that we take out. One of our requirements is they have to have, and most places have at least a computer in the building. And I have a router here, and we can unplug theirs, plug it into the router, and then plug their computer back into our router so it doesn't affect their business, but yet gives us the data stream that we need in order to run the laptops that we're using with their clients. And most of them, that's the way they refer to the people that they're working with. We have 10 laptops for use on our outreach. We have gone to one of the homeless shelters. It was one of the ones run by a religious organization, and done classes for those folks, and they were specific ones to help these individuals get jobs. So we were doing job search, creating resumes, and then doing some basic skills for, I think it was, we did word processing, set up email accounts, because you can't do job searches anymore without having an email account. And it was all based on the needs that the organization expressed to us. We've worked with 2 drug rehab centers, same thing. They don't have a computer center for them. It gives their clients the opportunity to improve skills. Sometimes they come in and we do typing. That was one of the skills that several of them were trying to get onto the government job for helping folks with the Affordable Care Act to get logged in and to fill out their forms, and they had to be able to type at a certain speed to pass the test. So every time I came, they were practicing, and a couple of them got jobs with this as a result. We have a senior center that we're working with. We've worked with 2 different senior groups, and we've done the battered women's shelter in Salt Lake, and one of the community centers lost their instructors with the cutbacks, and so we offered to teach classes for them until they can get someone hired as well. So we go in one day a week, so at least that center is offering classes, and this was their curriculum, so they gave me their curriculum to work with. So sometimes we have to take the lab out, and sometimes we don't, because some of the locations will allow us to use computers that they have on site, but we are providing the service to get their clients or the people that come and use their facilities the skills that they need to better their lives. I guess I can talk a little bit about the portable lab that we take out. It's 11 computers, 1 for the instructor. There's a projector, a router. There's 2 of these big bags because we can't carry them all in one. And then we have 3 of the little bags that carry the mice and the power supplies. We also, some locations, their tables won't accept the mice because they're optical mice, so we had to get mice pads, and we usually carry power strips as well because not all locations have that available for us. So it's about 140 pounds worth of equipment, and we have a lovely library vehicle that we take it around town in. We only do within Salt Lake city limits. We do get requests outside of the city limits, and we invite them to then come into our library lab for instruction if that's what they are willing to do, just simply because we are restricting this outreach one to inside the city. So any questions?
Well, I just had a comment. It goes back to what you've been saying about how people are using the library for a lot of different things, and for a lot of people it's vital for them to use it. And Skip mentioned the statistic that 97% have internet access. Well, that's if they have the money to pay up to it. I mean, I just recently got internet access because I was a poor college student and I couldn't afford it, and so I would go to the library so I could, do my homework and do whatever else I needed to do on the internet. And so, when they throw that statistic out there, that 97%, that's not telling the whole story, because there's a lot of people out there that can't afford. I mean, even if it's the lowest, the $30 plan, that $30 a month just isn't attainable. So.
Wasn't in your college student budget, right?
Yep.
No. I mean, I had food and rent, and that's pretty much tuition.
Yeah.
That's all I had.
We do have college students that come in. The other thing that we get a lot of is patrons bringing in their laptops, their tablets, and their smartphones and asking us how they work, or to help them with problems that they're having with them. And the staff in my lab also deal with that on a daily basis. They help 2 or 3 people probably on any given day with hardware.
Well, I think I want to speak to your comment as well about coming into the library. I have the opportunity of sitting on the Wasatch Front Broadband Council as well. And when I heard that 97% statistic, immediately I talked to Kelly Cole and said, what? Really? Because my internet, I am adding computers and adding software to manage that time on those computers because our usage just keeps going up and up and up. And I'm freaking out because I can't control all of this stuff that's happening in the library, and people are upset because they're waiting for 2 hours for a computer, and I've added computer after computer, and we have 14 currently, and I just figured out based on our Q1 statistics for sessions and how many hours were open, we will have to turn people away by the end of the year, literally turn them away, like 2,000 of them by the end of the year, unless I get more computers, more space, another switch, expand our network, get desks, or buy laptops for people. I don't know how to manage that. So it's interesting to me. I was interested by that comment. I'd like to actually talk to some other libraries and look at our communities and maybe even do a little bit of brief surveying. Are people coming in because there's one computer at home and 5 computer users because education is so, you're having to use a computer so much more and there's just not enough time at home? You also have a 2-hour wait in your home? Or, why is that? Or is our speed that much faster? We also have a 1 gig connection for our single branch system. So it's an interesting question that I would like to answer, why it keeps going up 300% in 5 years. Sessions, 300% growth. So freaking out is the understatement.
Well, I'm from St. George, from the 5 County Association of Governments, and we have someone from Washington County on our Regional Broadband Council. And even in areas like New Harmony, Enterprise, these very rural areas, they said they're getting, tons of people coming in to the library once they find out that they have internet access there. So in the areas that there's really only a couple hundred people in town, they're still, having a hard time to meet all the demand for it.
I also think that there are a lot of people that come in because they have readily accessible expertise at the desk, truly, because I had a person, and I wish I had the picture, brought his huge computer, and when I say huge, it was huge. He had to carry it in pieces, an entire computer that he had built, but he didn't have internet access at home, and he needed to install some updates on it, and he wanted to install some software, and he was very proud of it. The screen was possibly bigger than my TV. It was huge. So there are some struggles, I think, with end user equipment or keeping your own end user equipment updated, the expertise at the desk. I think there are some reasons that people come in, and it's not just the connection, but certainly we couldn't do it without that connection.
Okay, let me give you a little background on the state library and the relationship to bookmobiles. The state library is a state agency. It is a part of a larger department, the Department of Heritage and Arts. And our experience with internet goes back to the mid-90s when, this sounds like a UEN cheerleading team, and it really is, because we worked with UEN from then to begin to connect up libraries. And we still provide funding, both state and federal. Jamie mentioned this, and there's state and federal funding made available to all of Utah's public libraries for a number of purposes, but one of the significant ones is to make advances in technology. We also have a program that requires those libraries, in order to receive these funds, to have a certain level of technology already, and lately that's included, wireless has been a huge factor in that. We also provide, actually this began in collaboration with Utah Education Network as well, online resources through our Public Pioneer website, which again brings resources to the most remote regions of Utah through their libraries. The Bookmobile has had a history of, bookmobiles are in the places that are probably least accessible. When there's a bookmobile in a certain county, it usually means the county has not had the the funds, or there aren't cities of a substantial size in order to actually build and develop and grow their own library. That's a fairly expensive proposition. So they typically work with the state library to provide a bookmobile service. And as Jamie mentioned, she was a bookmobile librarian. That usually consists of two pieces. It usually consists of the bookmobile, of which there are 8 left in the state, and a repository or bookmobile headquarters, which oftentimes serves as the main library for the small community that it happens to be in. And so whether it's in Wayne County or Juab County or whatever, there's a combination of these services. And I just might say that we have had internet on those bookmobiles for probably about 5 years, but we've been working with different ways, actually probably longer than that, 5 to 7 years. We originally began with satellite service, and so we had all the bookmobiles modified by placing a satellite on top and subscribing to the services, and that proved to be okay in certain areas, but it typically took them a long time to set up, a long time to drop down, and if your bookmobile stop is only in a certain area for, say, an hour or so, you're not going to have time, and in many cases the connectivity was bad. In the repositories themselves, those pretty substantially have internet service, usually, again, in cooperation with Utah Education Network, and some of those have been able to take advantage of the E-rate program as well. But in the bookmobile, it developed after satellites, finally, and Britton Lund is our current director of the bookmobile operation. She was able to get together with the State Department of Technology Services and some of the public safety people in the state and determined that probably the best way to go was the air card with a booster antenna. So right now on all of the bookmobiles we have some iPads, and we've also been able to technologically provide a centralized catalog. If you go into a library, you check stuff out. The stuff is in a catalog. You can see it online. You can put holds and stuff online. Well, all of the bookmobiles have that capacity now because they're able to use a centralized ILS system, which is actually in the cloud and which is administered at the state library. They're able to access that out on the road in 95% of their stops, because of their access to the internet. So both they're able to conduct business as well as patrons are able to go online and get online and either use the iPads or use it as a wireless hotspot. There are a couple of areas I might mention, since this seems to be a topic today that we're not able to get any access to internet, and Britton was quite specific on these locations. It's northwestern Juab County and these towns of Garrettson and Exdale and Angle and Alton, and in western Millard County. And some of those are in Paiute and Garfield. So there's still parts of the state that where there's stops where there isn't anything available. But in most cases, they're able to provide a basic internet service. If Becky were here, the Bookmobile librarian, she would have some great anecdotes about people using the service. I can just give you a couple of things in talking to Britton. One of the things that we find is out in southern Utah, where a lot of these are, there's a lot of tourist business, and so a lot of the tourists find the bookmobiles or the repositories to be convenient places to take care of their internet business, and so that's quite typical. And then we do have people who oftentimes find themselves in these rural areas where many times the opportunities have either gone or passed them by, and they're able, and so they don't have the ability or the either financial or sometimes physical to maintain their own internet service. And so we have a lot of users. He gives an example of a person who comes into the library when it's too cold or hot, or sits in his car when they're closed in order to get internet access. So it's an important lifeline to those communities that are in the rural parts of the state. And I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions about Bookmobile service?
Well, kind of a Julianne bookmobile question. We have one of the things that we've gone to great lengths to do is to try and get our schools wired. We have gigabit service to all the schools in Cache County. I'm with the Bear River Association of Governments. And these remote areas have schools and gigabit service, but nobody can access it. But they have school libraries, they have other facilities, but we don't seem to be able to integrate the services that are provided by the public libraries versus the school internet access. And we're talking about remote rural areas, people that can't get internet any other way. A lot of these towns, the only high speed that's in that town is at the school. And it seems to me like we're wasting a huge asset by not figuring out a way to access that resource that's there and making it available. And then the next question kind of applies to librarians is, we listened to a keynote speaker this morning that talked about all the different things where the internet is going. And one of them he used as an example was dialysis and doing remote monitoring on dialysis. And have you thought about providing a private place where people can do medical consults and those kinds of things from a remote location to a doctor? I mean, I realize Salt Lake City is not a remote location, but the things that, like Tooele, might apply if you have medical patients that are looking for a place, but I know it does apply in Logan. A lot of the issues that apply to people with mobility issues apply to doctors and medical issues, and having a private place to do a consult when they can't afford it in their own home or can't get it in their own home seems to be a critical issue.
Somebody want to comment about those issues?
First of all, let me just make a quick, I think you'll want to stay here for the next session in D, because there's a kind of I think telehealth is going to be one of the aspects, and I think there are some other things that other departments are doing with regard to that. Just with regard a little bit to the politics of sharing the internet, this has been, the state library typically works with, not typically, but unanimously works with the local county government in order to provide the internet, or the Bookmobile service, for example. And so it's kind of has to be a teamwork between the county and the state library working with UEN in order to try to get the school districts on board. And sometimes, historically, that's been a little bit of a battle. I think, though, if there's any specific case where that can be facilitated, the county, UEN, and the state library should be able to help.
Concerned about the legalities because it's federal dollars paying for that high speed to go to the schools. Is there some restriction on what it can be used for and those kind of things, whether or not we're beating our heads against the wall?
Well, the one thing about the E-rate program is it does include, of course, both schools and libraries. So the intent there is to provide that kind of discounting for everyone. And I believe, in terms of UEN, and Dennis can probably speak to this better, but we have, there are relationships between schools that allow for libraries, for example, to get quality internet service. Did you want to say something about that? That might be helpful.
I also think it had a lot to do with the UAN only allows for academic reasons. Isn't that correct? The portion, will you speak to that for a second?
That is correct. That's with E-rate, more specifically than even UEN. The E-rate, it's only to academic institutions, but libraries qualify, and libraries obviously offer wireless and public computers, so it's okay to get on Facebook. It's okay to do whatever.
Yeah, the E-rate rules surrounding access through a UEN connection for public library use. Some of the issues that we run into with extending access from a school district facility to a library facility, surround security issues and management issues of that connection. But it's certainly technically possible, and I think there are ways that we could look at working with communities to extend access points from a school building to a library. For E-rate program rules, that is really Right, if they don't,
School is it.
yeah, that's,
There's no public library in that town. They rely on bookmobiles and other facilities.
well, and then if from a school you can access community use, I mean, E-rate will allow that for Wi-Fi access or after-hours access. And so it is technically possible and is okay through the E-rate program rules. That's not the thing that UEN gets worried about is if there's any commercial use going on over that connection, we always have to be very careful about that. Or for a primary residential use, we're not allowed to do that.
All right, we have about 5 minutes to go ahead and wrap this up. Just one question I wanted to pose along those same lines is the threat, is it an environmental threat that sometimes these systems aren't being used for the public? They're only used for the school? Can anybody comment on that as far as persons sitting outside in a car outside of your school using your Wi-Fi connection from a school? Do you think that would pose an environmental threat for your children?
Not any more than them sitting inside the library. I think when, I'm of the mindset that I ask why not before I ask why should we. I ask why not, and then I ask, does this fit within our strategic plan? Because libraries, by and large, public libraries, there are so many possibilities. It's just our limitations are time and resources. So we guide ourselves. Our ship is steered by why not, and does it fit within our strategic plan? Because we can be good at a billion things, or we can really make some progress on, 4 or 5 main categories that we're trying to go for. So does that answer that question?
Can I just add, just on a sort of a technical legal note, Utah has a filtering requirement if you want to get federal funds. The filtering requirement and then the schools have a filtering requirement which is much more stringent than public libraries have. So that does, there is that has to be dealt with. That's a factor in terms of sharing internet that goes back to what you were saying. There are ways to do that, but that is a major difference between internet access in a school and internet access in a library.
Have you thought about video conference or private video capabilities?
Yes, and we could do that now. I think with the health reasons, the people who might want to use that will definitely want a private space. And the limitation of perhaps a smaller library is where is this going to occur, and how can you make that a safe environment for them? The technology is there. It's very, we have to be very conscious of not putting someone in a situation, yes, video conference with your doctor in this corner, and we'll just cordon off the area with orange tape. And there are several libraries, many libraries, that are in that situation, that they simply just don't have the space or the capability. We're in a situation where we do have some reading rooms, and our building was built 13 years ago. I think in a library environment where you are building libraries, and super jealous of systems that get to do that right now. The sky's the limit, and those are great comments, things to think about. Where are we headed, for sure, to make sure we have the space and resources for people to make things possible.
We are seeing libraries that are being built now typically include much more than just places for books and computers or whatever, that they're becoming, for economics and for other reasons, they're becoming community centers. So they have much more flexible ability to do different things going forward. And I think we're going to see that. We're seeing it obviously in the big city libraries, but we're also seeing it in the smaller libraries. And just one example of a really tremendous local library is I think Springville, which is a fairly recent library, but it's a very fine. It has lots of space and lots of flexibility, and I think that's the wave of the future. So that we'll be able to, to integrate these kind of things and do them going forward.
Real small communities. The only thing they've got is a school. They'll probably never put a library in. They'll probably always rely on a bookmobile or some resource like that, or a community center. Call it a I don't know what the solution is, but like you said, libraries cost money.
It's
Well,
well spent.
Well, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up and want to give these guys a hand that are up here on the panel. And we appreciate audience participation today.